Hello there. Welcome back to PreMed Playbook, where we go from applications to acceptances. And today is episode 2, and we'll be talking about the impactful experience essay. So, what is the impactful experience essay? This prompt is intended for those applicants who have had impactful life experiences and who have faced or overcome challenges in a variety of areas, and that can be in your family, financial insecurity, community, education, religion, or some other experiences. And the experiences can be from any point in your lifetime, and they don't need to be related to the field of medicine or healthcare. And medical schools don't expect all applicants to answer this question. Providing an essay is completely optional. However, I would highly recommend that you do try to write something here. This is a great opportunity to show more about yourself. So if you have anything of relevance, I would strongly suggest writing about it. And this essay is around, it's 1325 characters. 1,325, so that's about a paragraph, a little bit more than a paragraph in my opinion, but you can still write a good bit with that. So, these are some tips that I tried to follow. I guess I don't know if I followed them. I don't know if I was actively trying to do this, but I did do this in my essay as we're about to read. So, the first thing I want to focus on is focusing on context, not just repetition. So, if an obstacle is already mentioned in your activities or personal statement, you can use this space to add depth or context rather than just restating the experience. You can explain its broader impact on your journey. So you want to avoid rewriting your personal statement. If your personal statement already touches on overcoming adversity or something else that would be in your most impactful experience, you want to ensure that this section provides new insights or details rather than just, restating the same story. And you also want to highlight unseen struggles in this. And that means choosing experiences or talking about experiences that aren't well documented in other parts in your application. So perhaps family responsibilities, financial hardships, some personal or mental health challenges, systemic barriers you faced, and how that has shaped your path to medicine. You also want to emphasize growth and learning. So rather than just focusing on the challenge, you want to, of course, talk about how you adapted, persevered, and grew from it. And in my opinion, if you can, I would try to connect this to your future development as a physician. I think that connecting this to your medical journey and how it has influenced your perspective, motivation, or your approach to patient care, that would be really beneficial if you can include that in this essay. So now we're going to look at mine. You can feel free to pause this and read it for yourself. We're also going to go over it in the next slide, and I'm going to have sentences highlighted, so it may be easier to read this one. So once again, you can pause and read it because I'm not going to, but we are about to go over it. So we have these different highlighted colors, and just for a little bit of information, the blue stands for if I'm trying to connect it to my healthcare journey, and we just talked about that. It's these points right here. These are what they are, but let me just go back to that. Things in blue is connected to my journey. Things highlighted in green is me trying to add depth or context to other things that are already mentioned in my application. Yellow, that means paint a picture, and that just basically means, giving details, describing it in a way to really let the reader get an immersive visualization of whatever it is you're talking about. And then orange, things highlighted in orange, that is me trying to, emphasize my growth and resilience, what I learned, things like that. So let's start off with this first sentence and, the parts in green. So one tip I mentioned earlier was if an obstacle is already mentioned in your activities or personal statement, you want to use this space to add depth or context. So I know if you were watching these vids in order, you haven't got to the other areas of my writing, like the activity section or a personal statement. But I do mention a lot of these things already, like growing up in a low-income community. So here in this essay, I'm adding more context by bringing in an example, which is this part right here. Grew up in a community high in poverty and crime. And in the first sentence, where educational aspirations were rare. So in this first sentence, I set the tone, this line in green. I grew up in a community where educational aspirations were rare. The reader is immediately thrusted into the area I grew up in, but I don't immediately state the repercussions of growing up in an environment where educational aspirations were rare. I give the reader some time to digest and learn more about me and my experiences. Talking about being raised in a single parent household, high in poverty and crime. Then, when we see later on, moving on to this green section right here, I connected back to the first sentence where I discussed the disconnect between me and other pre-med students at my college, and the sort of imposter syndrome that I felt. So, I grew up in a community where educational aspirations are rare. I give some more details, and then I talk about the repercussions of that. So moving on to the next part here that we have highlighted in yellow, when writing this essay, you want to paint a picture of your experiences. You don't want to give a vague description.
I was raised as a middle-class kid.
If describing an unsafe neighborhood, don't merely say, I grew up in a violent neighborhood. What made it violent? What did you see? How did that affect you? Once again, I'm always going to circle back to making your application unique. So giving examples when describing your experience is how you add that unique tone. Now, obviously, growing up in a violent community, that's not super unique. I'm sure many applicants have had similar upbringings, and they're going to talk about that. So if I or yourself want to separate that impactful experience from others, then I need to start, telling some stories. So even if the context of your story is similar or the same to another applicant's, in my case, someone being shot outside my house, that story immediately narrows the perspective down to my lived experience. No one else saw this exactly as I did, reacted the way I did, or learned the lessons I did, because the story I'm sharing, it's inherently exclusive to me. So your unique voice comes from the details, emotions, and reflections that only you can provide. So lean into that, because that's a tool that will be beneficial in your writing, not just the impactful experience essay, but anytime you have an opportunity to showcase yourself. So once again, here in yellow, I talk about me leaving the discussion because someone had just been shot outside my porch. That adds a unique tone. There could be another person talking about living in a violent neighborhood and how people get shot outside their house, but it's very unlikely they're going to have this exact same sentence as I do. And this sentence, it gives the reader something to remember, and it also, they're able to attach this story to me. This is Yushan's essay. This is whatever your name's is essay. That's what you want it to be. Not just any essay that anyone can write. You want it to be yours. So moving on to blue, as I mentioned before, another component of this essay that I think you should try to fit in is a reflective piece. So if you're talking about a struggle, experience, a bad grade, whatever it may be, you want to try to find a way to, talk about how it has led to your growth, or perhaps changed your outlook on something, or has better prepared you for your career in medicine, or how it shows your resilience. Basically, it shows that you can be in difficult situations that may have not gone your way, but you can learn and use them as fuel to do better. So looking at this line in blue, this first line starting with I took the initiative to create and help in programs aimed at aiding others from similar backgrounds. This goes back to my first point about adding context to other parts of your application. So in my activity section, which we'll go over in a future video, I have this program that I helped create listed. However, I don't explain in that activity description, what led me to make that program. So this essay just kind of gives me an opportunity to briefly give the explanation without being redundant. Furthermore, this ties to my journey to being a doctor and a medical student. So you don't have to follow what I did and connect it to medicine. You can mention how this, experience is beneficial or relevant to some other area you're passionate about. But the main point is to tell the AdCom who's reading this how this experience is relevant to you, however that may be. And then moving on to the conclusion of this, and this is also highlighted in blue, I continue that point by saying that what I essentially want to do is like what I did in this program. I want to help my patients in the future. I want to continue the work that I started, and I conclude with a little reflective piece to wrap it all up. And the reflective piece insinuates that I intend to be one of the people lending a hand to low-income, vulnerable communities, which is what this essay, if you read it, is about. Lastly, orange, emphasizing growth and resilience. So the last part of this essay I want to focus on is being positive. So rather than just describing the challenge, you want to focus on, how you adapted, persevered, and grew from it. So many applicants will be writing about some bad grade, a traumatic experience, growing up poor, being in a bad neighborhood, and so on. All these topics are inherently negative. And we want to paint a clear picture of our situation, but we don't want to be hyper fixated on the struggle. And what I mean by that is it shouldn't sound like you're complaining or you're asking for pity. I have some examples I wrote on the next slide that are good examples and bad examples, but let's just talk about this line in orange first. So this line in orange right here, despite the obstacles I faced, I am grateful for them as they have allowed me to grow into the man I am today. This line is kind of a pivot line where I talk about the positive aspects and implications of my upbringing. I know the sentence right before this kind of shifts the tone, but we really could take this line in orange and move it in the front. And move it in front of this blue line here, and it would still work. So it would read like this. Despite the obstacles I faced, I am grateful for them as they have allowed me to grow into the man I am today. Period. I took the initiative to create and help in programs aimed at aiding others from similar background access to opportunities that would otherwise seem obtainable. My experiences reinforce my dedication to uplifting underserved communities, ... So this orange line basically says, yeah, I may have had this obstacle, but I'm not even that mad about it. Actually, this obstacle has led to my growth and has steered my aspirations towards helping others. So in my opinion, you want to have a statement like this in your impactful experience essay because it's kind of like, this essay is kind of like a movie. For those of you who saw Avengers Infinity War, at the end of that movie, you felt the theater feeling a little sad, but hyped, but also mournful, because it was not a happy ending. The good guys lost in that movie. And you don't want your essay to kind of be like that, like, oh, my life sucks, and it still sucks, and it's not going to get better. Because even if, your life actually is just terrible, you don't want to show the reader that there is no light at the end of the tunnel for you. Why would they want to accept you and, put you in this rigorous lifestyle of, tons of grades and working in a hospital if you seem completely consumed by the hardships that you're already going through with no signs of resilience or hope? Or if you're just simply complaining this entire essay, you don't want to do that. So now let's look at some examples. So here are some bad and good examples that I came up with. So here's the first one. Growing up in my neighborhood was nothing but a constant struggle, and no matter how hard I tried, things never seemed to get better. So we just talked about this. You don't want to just be completely negative and show no sign of hope. So this line right here makes it sound like there is no growth and there's no lesson learned, just endless hardship. So now I tried to make a good example, still, talking about a similar thing, and it reads like this. Growing up in an under-resourced community forced me to become resourceful at a young age. Honestly, I'm grateful for those lessons. I wouldn't be where I am today without, and then, dot, 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 dot. So this does show that, you've grown, you persevered, it shows gratitude, and, it still mentions the struggle, but it turns it around from what is seen as a negative situation and turns into a positive one. And remember, it's like a movie. You want this to have a happy ending. So moving on to the next one, we have this next bad quote, and it says, "It's unfair that others had so much more than me, and I had to work twice as hard just to get the same opportunities." Once again, this is just overly negative. Even if this is true, this sounds bitter rather than demonstrating motivation and determination. Perhaps you may want to say something like this: "Though I didn't have the same resources as others, working harder taught me how to be resilient. I'm grateful for the work ethic I developed through these challenges." So this example also showcases gratitude while emphasizing, your growth and perseverance. But it's a bit lighter in tone. Structurally, this quote is basically the same as the top one. You can, these two right here. My apologies. The use of the word forced in this first one right here. Hopefully you can see my mouse. This word forced versus the use of the word taught. This may not seem like a big deal, but these differences in words do shift the tone. Because I don't really know how to explain it, but I'm sure you get what I'm getting at here. Like these do read a little bit differently. So the synonyms that you use when crafting your essay, they are important if you're trying to convey a certain tone. And last example we have, my grades suffered because my life was incredibly difficult, and no one understood how hard it was for me to succeed. Once again, this is negative. This comes off as making excuses instead of showing accountability. You can mention the obstacles in your life and how it affected you and how it may have affected your grades, but you need to show what you did in response. That is equally as important. So here's another example, a good example. Despite setbacks affecting my grades that semester, I adapted by developing stronger study habits and seeking support, ... So this new example acknowledges the difficulty while demonstrating accountability and a proactive response. So, med school is going to be tough. You're going to get bad grades in med school, and it's going to be challenging, trying to study all that material. And the adcoms want to know that you're going to be able to, go through those hardships and recover. And if in your impactful experience essay, you're just talking about how much you suffered in undergrad, they're going to be like, no way can this, person do well in med school. So you want to always show, accountability and the response you had to these difficult situations. So to wrap up, these are just 3 points that I want to highlight. Number 1, consistency. You want to have a consistent theme throughout your application. This essay is the first of your writing that I think they see. Like when you do the primary application, then you can look at the PDF of it. The first essay that pops up is the impactful experience essay. So in my opinion, this essay kind of sets the tone for what your application is going to be like. Second, you want to emphasize growth and resilience. This is the other impactful experiences essay. So you want to talk about how this impacted you. use this essay to showcase your ability to adapt, grow, and recover from difficult situations. And lastly, make it about you. There will be many similarities amongst applicants when it comes to answering this prompt. However, you want to have that story, that light bulb moment, the emotions you felt in that experience. You want to talk about what you saw, what you smelled, whatever it is. Write something that makes this essay yours. So hopefully I've aided in the writing process as you write your unique essays. I tried to hit all the main points of the impactful experience essay, but if you have any questions, let me know and I'll get to them. The next part of the primary application I'll be going over is the activity section, to be specific, non-clinical activities. I'm probably going to break down the activity sections into non-clinical, clinical, and then the most meaningful, so it'll be multiple parts. And then hopefully you guys stay tuned for the next video. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope I see you in the next episode.